let's talk about the American paradise of Portland, Oregon. And I say, obviously, I say that as a joke. Portland is an absolute shithole. I would never want to go there. The people there are awful. It just seems like the asshole of America at this point. So here we have an article from the New York Times, which this is going to be probably a pretty frustrating read here because we know that they're going to gaslight on all kinds of things. We've heard the stories recently about how the New York Times has essentially been taken over by intersectionalist, postmodernist Marxists, and they are running anybody who, people like Barry Weiss. If anybody read her letter of resignation a couple weeks ago, it's a very hostile environment, and they are all on board for the social justice movement. And they probably want all of us conservatives wiped off the face of the planet, or at least shut the hell up from polite society, which, I guess would be the antithesis of a polite society when you're forcing people to shut up. But anyways, I'm rambling. Let's get into this. So here's the article. To battle a militarized foe, Portland protesters use umbrellas, pool noodles, and fire. Huh. I mean, it's... If this sounds like a circus to you, it probably is. With no clear leadership or blueprints, demonstrators have scrounged for items from home and largely embraced a strategy of spontaneous consensus. I think that seems like a misnomer to me. Spontaneous consensus? I think when anything is spontaneous and you have a large group of angry people, you're going to get very little consensus from that group. So we'll go ahead and see how Mike Baker and Thomas Fuller here frame this story. Let's maybe give them the slightest hint of benefit of the doubt, but they're probably going to lose that from us pretty quickly. So from Portland, Oregon, shields were made of pool noodles, umbrellas, and sleds. The body armor was pieced together with bicycle helmets and football pads. The weapons included water bottles and cigarette lighters. I'm not sure water bottles count as weapons. I mean, unless you freeze the water in them. Show full article. Let's see. Facing federal forces who came to Portland to subdue them. They did not actually come to Portland to subdue the rioters. They came to Portland to defend the federal building that was under attack by the rioters. The federal government does have certain levels of jurisdiction, and federal buildings are included in that. So if you are going to go and attack a federal building, then you better believe that the feds are going to come in there to protect it. I mean, otherwise, what are you thinking? All right. So, facing federal forces that came to Portland to subdue them, many of the city's protesters, and here we go, they continue to frame them as protesters. These people are rioters. I'm going to go up to your own headline, use fire. The protesters use fire. Once a protester is using fire, they are no longer a protester, and they are a violent mob. They are a violent riot. So let's see here. Many of the city's protesters were taken to the streets this week with items scrounged from home. Then they assembled at the federal courthouse each night with some starkly different visions of how to put their tools to use. Well, I'm not sure what you're going to do with a pool noodle, for one. I mean, this is just silly. These people are LARPers. They're not revolutionaries. It's like Karl Marx said, history repeats itself. First is tragedy, second is farce. Well, we're seeing the farce right now. But even farce can go too far and cause quite a lot of havoc. In 55 consecutive nights of protest in Portland, again, not protest, riots, no two have been alike. The protest began on May 29th with the killing of George Floyd in police custody in Minneapolis. They have continued ever since, night after night, and they show no signs of letting up. No, they don't. With no clear leadership or blueprints, the demonstrators have largely embraced a strategy of spontaneous consensus. I've already covered why that's a misnomer, which follows the whims of the crowd, which just means they do whatever strikes them. I mean, they're like lemmings, If you get them marching down the street, all it takes is one person in the front to turn one direction and the whole crowd follows because nobody's actually thinking. They're a mindless horde. They're zombies. Follows the whims of the crowd and sometimes the resolution of their internal disagreement, such as whether fire is an appropriate addition to their protest. I highly doubt that there's really a whole lot of you know, well, should we do this? Let's have a debate about this. No, I think it's probably somebody throws a Molotov cocktail and some people say, no, don't do that. And the person yells, shut the fuck up, and throws another Molotov cocktail. It's really organic and non-centralized, says Luke Meyer, who walked through the streets overnight with a plywood shield. You almost vote with your actions. That's not a vote. That's just doing whatever you want. Listen to the way these people talk. I mean, this is absolute gaslighting at its finest. You know, they use the term vote because that makes it sound like it's a democratic process. No, this is just a herd. Or not even a herd. It's a because a herd at least has a leadership. You know, they follow a shepherd. This is just anarchy. It's just chaos. It's just chaos. You don't vote in chaos. For weeks, city officials who have been the target of much of the ire have been unable to find a way to bring demonstrations to an end. Now these protesters are giving grief to federal agents who were assigned to maintain calm in the city, but have instead watched the number of protesters outside the federal courthouses swell into the thousands. It's funny, what was it, Brian Stelter the other day was saying, you know, why is Trump just focused on a handful of angry people in these cities? Well, it sounds like these people are actually being honest and admitting that they're in the thousands, but also the federal agents were not there to maintain calm in the city. There is no calm in these cities. There's no calm to maintain. There hasn't been for a while, ever since, you know, Rose City Antifa started taking over the town in 2016 or 2015, whenever the fuck it was. But they're not there to maintain any calm in the city. They're there to protect their own damn building. And that's the thing. You get these people, like, they're going to attack a federal building, and then the feds come up to defend it, and they say, oh no, help, you're violating my rights, You know, they're like those wimpy little nerds that don't quite realize they're wimpy little nerds back in high school, which they just try to antagonize someone that was much bigger than them, and that person was just kind of like, whatever, leave me alone. And then eventually they turn around and they sock the guy, and then that nerd runs to the teacher and says, this guy is beating me up. There's a reason why, if you watch my videos, you've heard me say we need to go back to stuffing certain people back in their gym lockers, because these people need to toughen up. This is a result of never being pushed around and told to toughen up, so that they can actually understand and contextualize some of the hardships in their lives or some of the failures that they themselves have met. So let's continue here. Whose streets, they shout in one of their signature chants. Our streets. No, they're not. They're not your streets. Whose lives matter? Black lives matter. How about this? All lives matter. Had to do it. The protesters have drawn diverse crowds, including teenagers, grandmothers, longtime activists, and those joining the fray for the first time. In the early morning hours on Wednesday, protesters use a range of tactics. While some spent their time chanting, dancing, or locking arms, others slowly chipped away at the temporary wooden facade of the courthouse building, eventually pulling away a whole panel to expose an entryway. Some used lasers or bright lights to shine at holes from which the federal officers sometimes fire projectiles into the crowd. Others dragged the barricades to cover the building's entrances. So basically, you got some people that are there to act a fool, and others that are there to cause mayhem. But guess what? If you're there with the people that are there to cause mayhem, you're guilty by association, because it is your choice to be there with these people. You know, there's a reason why we have crimes like accessory to murder. You know, if you're the getaway driver after a bank job that kills a bunch of people, you're still going to get charged with murder because you chose to be part of that whole operation. At one point during the protests that raged from late Tuesday night into Wednesday... Wait, they make it sound like it was a one-day thing there. Well, they've already admitted it was 55 days. I'm not going to rag them for that too much. Federal agents rushed out of the courthouse and shoved a group of mothers wearing matching yellow shirts as tear gas billowed around them. Let's be real. None of these people have kids. Anybody with kids is sitting at home, you know, worried about their kids. They're not going to go and join a violent riot. And if they do, they should have their kids taken away from them, because that is shitty, shitty motherhood. If you're a mother and you're at these riots, well, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You're a shitty mother, and your kid has a terrible future in front of them. I know that sounds harsh, but reality isn't always nice. In another moment, the agents knocked knocked one protester down into a pole or onto a pole. After clearing a park, the agents rummaged through a makeshift kitchen that has been used to feed the protesters, aka homeless people, knocking food and supplies to the ground. Well, you know what? They started this battle. There are strategies to battle, and one of those strategies is cutting off your opponent's supply lines. So you're not just going to be like, okay, we don't want you guys burning down our courthouse, and you're obviously not going to try, but you know what? Keep your pizza over there. No. There is strategy on both sides of this. And the protesters are the ones setting the rules. They're the ones on offense here. The feds are on defense. And you see them all crying about, oh, well, where are all the gun rights activists and the small government people here to defend us from being snatched up by unmarked stormtroopers and these feds? It's like, okay, well, for one, they're not unmarked. They have DHS on their Department of Homeland Security on their uniforms. They're dressed in uniform. So that blows a hole through that narrative, which we've heard Nancy Pelosi spouting about as well. And also, why would we give you everything that... So let's give them the premise that their narrative is true and that they are being whisked away off the street by unmarked feds and taken away to be interrogated. Congratulations! That's how communism works. You fucking communists. You're not going to get our sympathies because they are doing to you exactly what you plan to do to us. We're not going to come rushing to your defense. How stupid of you to even expect that. These people have no understanding of nuance, no understanding of context, no understanding of how the bigger picture of what's going on plays into how we react to certain things. You guys started this. And we're not anarchists. We do believe that there needs to be a federal government. We just believe it should serve less purposes than and have less power than it claims to have right now. But if you're going to go and attack their buildings, one of the powers they do have is to defend their own damn buildings. So you're not going to get us on that. That's ridiculous. All right. Facing volleys of tear gas that left many coughing, the protesters retreated up Main Street, but they soon regrouped and returned as the authorities backed off. And an echo of the Umbrella Revolution in Hong Kong, please do not compare these people to Hong Kong. These people are China trying to fight. It's like a mirror reversal. You know, these people want to be China, and the country of the U.S. is Hong Kong. It's an exact mirror of what they're trying to say. Excuse me. Umbrella Revolution in Hong Kong. Protesters with shields and umbrellas took to the front of the lines to protect themselves and others from the weaponry of federal forces and tactical gear. Hey, you know how you can protect yourself from the weaponry of federal forces and tactical gear? Go the fuck home. Go home. Stop attacking them. You know, it's like they want to bring Nerf guns to a gunfight and then complain when they lose the fight, even though they were the agitators. It's retarded. The authorities have accused protesters of at times using dangerous methods, including launching projectiles from slingshots. Well, slingshots can be deadly. I don't know if you've ever been hit with a little metal ball coming at you at, however fast, maybe 200 feet per second. That can kill somebody. It can. They've also been launching mortars into the buildings, like commercial-grade fireworks, which are mortars. They can catch buildings on fire. I don't know if you saw in Minneapolis, just 2 months after the riots there, they went to this pawn shop that burned down. They find a dead body in it. There's probably people who have been wondering what happened to their friend or their we don't even know who it is yet, so I don't know what relations they might have. But, you know, their family members, their friends, wondering what the hell happened to them. And now 2 months later, they find his body burnt to a crisp in a pawn shop that they burned down, possibly by shooting mortars into it. One of the dozens of arrests during the demonstrations, a protester was charged recently with hitting an officer with a hammer. But yet, to hear the media say it, these are just peaceful protests. We are being lied to. We are being gaslit. Now, to be fair, This article is doing a better job of portraying it fairly than I was ever going to give it credit for. So I'm talking about the mainstream media as a whole right now. This article clearly is not perfect, and they're not framing things in the full light of reality, but at least they're giving a little bit of credence to the other side of the argument. I will give them that. In court documents, the federal government said that the protesters have committed vandalism, destruction of property, looting, arson, and assault. A Molotov cocktail was thrown on May 28th, according to court papers, and security cameras on federal buildings have been vandalized. One protester was accused of pushing a glass door on July 2nd, causing the glass to break and injured a deputy marshal. Now, see, what's interesting about what these people are doing is they're doing low-level attacks. Like, there's sort of a strategic brilliance to them bringing Nerf guns to a gunfight, in that the media is not going to cover them shooting their Nerf guns off, but they are going to cover the feds shooting their real guns back in return. Now, I'm using Nerf guns as a joke because they're not actually... Not everything they're doing is actually as harmless as a Nerf gun. I mean, they're throwing Molotov cocktails. They're hitting people with hammers. But if they know that if they brought guns out and they started using those on the feds, all of a sudden the media would not be able to gaslight the American people anymore. And so they're doing this. They're almost fighting a PR war right now, where they agitate and they cause all kinds of trouble and they cause low-level damage that is... Honestly, it's right at the borderline of permissibility. In fact, to me, it's beyond the borderline of permissibility. But they're working within the frameworks of how our mainstream media works. And our mainstream media will not cover low-level attacks or, hitting somebody with a bike lock, something like that. To them, that's the same as just punching somebody in the face, apparently. But if they were to bring guns out, all of a sudden, they wouldn't be able to hide the football anymore. And the narrative would fumble. So... There is, I mean, as stupid as these people are, they have, and I do think there is, I think they claim that there's no central leadership. There is central leadership. There's obviously people like George Soros that are funding people like this, that are training people like this. The central leadership is just not there on the scene. The central leadership just isn't there on the scene. And of course, the media is going to tell you that Antifa doesn't really exist. It's just an idea. But they have flags, especially in Portland. They have a branded Rose City Antifa. They have flags that they wave around. They are a branded cell. So we can only be lied to so much, and the media is going to find this out the hard way, that there's only so much they can lie to us before we call bullshit, and I think right now all of America is calling bullshit. The federal efforts to confront the demonstrators in recent days were often preceded by attempts by some protesters to light fires on the facade of the federal courthouse, which has been boarded up with wood that has been painted and targeted by protesters. Of course, on Wednesday morning, someone started trying to light a portion of the facade, but was blocked by another person. Later, a debate developed in the crowd over whether to allow the fire, with one protester arguing that being peaceful was the better route. Again, I think when we think of debate, we think of a civil discussion. This is probably just people yelling over chants at each other. And, and you probably have some people, the people who are probably saying that the peaceful route was better, they probably don't even understand what they're a part of. They probably don't even understand the communists, the Marxists, and they're not anarchists. They're not. These people are not anarchists. They're only anarchists insofar as they believe in true communism. But if you watch my last Revved Up video, the path to true communism is totalitarian authoritarianism. So while they may have an ideal of anarchism in their long term, which is a utopian impossibility that they're pursuing, their methodology on the ground, what we're seeing right now, will never be considered anarchistic because it is going to be totalitarian and trying to push towards their anarchistic utopian pipe dream. So, again, if you haven't watched, I know I keep mentioning it, but if you haven't watched it, A Very Un-American Revolution, it's on my Revved Up show. Go watch that. It will teach you a lot about this Marxist insurgency. And I learned a lot because, I do massive amounts of research doing this. Also, I always forget to do this on the Ram Reacts, but if you haven't, please subscribe, comment, hit the notification bell, like, share. Please share this channel. I am a young and growing channel, and I do need support from the people who watch this and appreciate the work that I do. So if you do like it, please don't be afraid to share. let your commie friends on Facebook and Twitter see that you are not one of them, and let them pay whatever price that takes. That's what I'm doing making these videos right now. We all have to stand up. Also, don't forget to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Parler. Of course, Facebook and Parler are the two that I use most often. I don't use Instagram and Twitter all that much, but it's at Thorburn. And if you would like to help contribute to the show, there are links to my Subscribestar, Patreon, and PayPal in the description below. So anyways, let's get back at this. On Wednesday morning, someone started trying to light a portion of the facade, but was blocked by okay, so that was the debate. Megan Smith was among those who opposed the use of fire, saying she douses any flames she encounters. I mean, how are you going to douse some of these flames? I mean, we've seen some of these buildings burning down, some of these buildings being torched. The insinuation in the framing there is that all of the fires that we see here is like a few pieces of paper that you can just pour a glass of water on. No, a lot of these fires are not dousable. So let's get that straight. She goes, I would prefer fires to be controlled. Okay, so she doesn't even oppose fires. She just doesn't want them as rampant as some of the others do. I would prefer the fires to be controlled, Miss Smith said. I get it that it's how you get your anger out, but it makes it dangerous for everyone else. In part, she said, starting a fire raises the risk for everyone because it is clear that it will prompt federal officers to come out and confront the crowds. And on Wednesday, it did just that. Well, what do you expect? I mean, these people think that they can poke a bear and then run and scream to the park ranger when they get mauled. Go ahead, keep poking that bear with the stick. The park ranger ain't coming when you scream with your face ripped off. And your face is gonna get ripped off. Alright, the federal authorities have seized on the lighting of fires as further justification for their presence in Portland. Yeah, because you're lighting the fires at their building. Guess what buildings tend to do when you light fires in them and around them? They tend to burn down. Individuals trying to set fire to buildings are no longer protesting, Chad Wolf, the acting Secretary of Homeland Security, said at a news conference on Tuesday. They are criminals. Yeah, they're arsonists. That's just a sect of criminals. It's a portion of criminality. Early on Tuesday morning, protesters had lit bonfires in the streets around the federal courthouse and tried to ignite the plywood protecting the building. There were fewer fires at the protests early on Wednesday morning. Fewer fires. Oh, wow, that's an improvement, right? No, just go home. If we left tomorrow, they would burn the building down. Exactly, said Mr. Wolf, who added that the agent was compiling video evidence of protesters lighting fires. Yeah, Mr. Wolf's insistence that federal agents stay to protect federal property, both the mayor of Portland and the governor of Oregon have asked that the federal agents leave the state. It is part of the dynamic that is causing the protest to swell into the thousands. And this is where things are getting insane. We are starting to see local and state authorities trying to tell the federal authorities that they have no jurisdiction in their states, not even at their own buildings. This is, I mean, there are parallels here to Fort Sumter in the start of the first American Civil War. And I say first because I'm of the mind that a second one might be impending. It's going to take a lot to avoid it at this point. I mean, they're sieging federal buildings, saying you have no right to be here. Get out. Well, this is secession right here. So to all you people that keep pointing out that the Confederacy are traitors, well, what do you say to Oregon right now? They're telling the federal government that they have no jurisdiction within their states and their cities. This sounds like a civil war. This sounds like or at least a war of secession. Even though they won't call it that, they won't use that terminology, but if you're kicking the feds out of your state, what does that mean? That's what happened at Fort Sumter at the beginning of the Civil War in the 1800s, 1860s, I mean. Among the protesters on Tuesday night was Rhonda Jordan, who works as quality control officer for a company that makes granola bars. Of course she does. Of course she works for a company that makes granola bars. Is anything more Portland than a fucking granola bar? I'm going to be laughing about that one for a hot minute here. All right. None of her friends felt bold enough to attend the demonstration, so she came alone, meaning they were smart. Frankly, I was quite afraid to come down here, too. The feds intimidate me. Well, then why are you going to a federal building to agitate the feds? You fucking idiot. All right, she said, clutching a sunflower is a symbol of peace. She's not on the peaceful side. She's on the side disturbing the peace. But the more they come at us with federal officers, the more people are going to come out here. The federal officers are not coming at you. You're coming at them, and they're defending their own damn building. What the fuck do you expect? God, I feel like a broken record right now. In recent days, Feds Go Home has become a rallying cry for protesters. Lori Vandenberg, a school counselor, and her daughter Emily V. something, a social worker, said that their presence was one of the main reasons they joined the protest on Tuesday night. I'm personally upset that the feds are here. At their own damn building? Do you understand how civics work? Do you understand basic civics? Apparently not. And these people work in education. She's a school counselor. Doesn't know how basic civics work. Homeschool your kids. Get them out of the public school system. Because as Lenin said, give me the child for 8 years and he'll be a Bolshevik for life. That's what they're doing. That's what most of these kids have experienced. They were given to the Bolsheviks early in age, and now they are Bolsheviks for life. All right, so that's that story. So, I mean, yeah, I actually do have to give it. I mean, I have to give a little bit of credit to these writers. They did portray both sides of the story to a degree. Of course, the framing of the rioters wasn't very accurate, but they did give a little bit of credence to the federal officers who were there and acknowledge that these even though they still called them protesters, they acknowledged a lot of the violent acts that the protesters are doing. So I'm not going to give them a full thumbs up on this one, but I will at least say, credit where credit's due. So anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. I've got more coming. So, again, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I hope to see you back here either later today or tomorrow. I've got a bunch of videos I'm recording now. I have no idea what order I'm releasing them in. Anyways, guys, have a good